Hello everybody, I am Zenith, and welcome to the Disney Debate, where, for all things Disney, Cat Mac, Y2Staller and I debate many of the things regarding Disney, or rather, where Cat Mac, Y2Staller and I just talk about a lot of different Disney movies and give our opinions on them. Today is a little bit different. As we stated last time, Cat Mac is not involved in this episode, only because she was not interested in this episode, and we decided, since it's not a major Disney film, that she didn't have to be here, and we're going to rotate the cast again the next time one of these films happens. And Kat, let me just say this right now, you are extremely lucky.
Why did she have to drop out of... Why did she have to drop out of this?
And she picked the right film. She did watch it with me, but she's a saint because she then watched it again with you, Eric.
Yeah, she did watch it again with me because I go, "Did you watch this?" I'm like, no, I haven't. And then she showed me it. She said it's a bit of a slug to get through, but a bit of a slug to get through. That's just the tip of the iceberg for what we're about to delve into.
Yes, but before we delve into the mess that is this film, how's it going, Eric?
Pretty good until I started watching this movie, but I know we've been harping. I know we're harping on this, but this film in particular, we were just talking about this, and we were saying that this is for the most part like Fess Parker's last movie. Well, generally speaking, because he has done other stuff since then, but I mean it's mostly like TV stuff, and he was in that Daniel Boone TV series. But this is the last of the Disney movies that Fess Parker is in.
And he goes out on a pretty low note. I'm sorry, Fess. You do an amazing job acting, but you couldn't save this film. And in fact, he's probably the only good thing about this film. Today we're talking about a film known only as The Light in the Forest. And going into this, none of us knew anything about this film. It's one of those obscure Disney films. And we were thinking, like, okay, after Old Yeller, things might pick up with the live-action films. I mean, Savage Sam is a little bit of a different story, mostly because it doesn't officially take place directly after Old Yeller. So I thought, okay, maybe the next live-action film in the timeline would be a little bit better. We haven't heard about it, but maybe it's a forgotten gem. The Light in the Forest is... And I say this knowing that we've said this a few different times in the course of the show, but I think this may be the worst Disney film that we have touched upon as of yet.
Yes, I agree. Because I know that throughout this podcast that we've covered some pretty sensitive stuff and some stuff that might be considered offensive by today's standards. I mean, I know you guys have covered Song of the South, and I've seen Song of the South on my own terms, but even with something like that has been widely regarded as offensive, I don't know. Maybe it's because the fact that movie in particular had zippity doodah in it, and it came off a little lighthearted. And the pacing of it wasn't so bad. That maybe that's kind of why I was able to watch it. But this one doesn't help that it's a slug to get through and that it's really, really offensive, even by today's standards. There's no way around this one. I saw this it was on YouTube, and as much as like YouTube has tried to block full movies, this one is one of those movies that Disney doesn't really care that it's free on YouTube. And for good measure.
It is much more insensitive to the Native Americans than a lot of films I've seen. Especially, Peter Pan had its moments where it was a little bit insensitive, but overall it was showcasing them in a positive light. This film does not do that. It is very, very insensitive to Native Americans. It is very insensitive to a bunch of different people. And for the first part of the film, I was thinking, okay, it's not quite as horrible as Savage Sam because it doesn't have these annoying characters. But its cardinal problem to me is that not only is it offensive, which is a big thing because Savage Sam was not offensive, but it's incredibly boring. It is one of those films that drags on, and I was looking at my watch so many times throughout the film. There are very few redeeming qualities about The Light in the Forest, and we should probably talk about what this film actually is about. The film is about a young boy who was raised by Native Americans. He was kidnapped by Native Americans. And like they said in Savage Sam, he was raised to be one of them. However, for some reason, they have this treaty with the white man. Basically, these British-looking people, I have no idea who they are, go in and have a treaty with the Indians. And their treaty is basically they will stop attacking and taking away the Indians' land if they return the people that they kidnapped from the white man. So that's how this film starts, is this treaty to bring back all the people that were kidnapped. Now, these kids are way older than they were when they were kidnapped. They must have been kidnapped really, really young, because they are around teenage, or they look like they're in their early, like, almost their early 20s, I want to say. I'm not exactly sure how old they're supposed to be in the context of the film, maybe late teens. But these kids, they're taken from the Native Americans who have raised them most of their lives, and all they remember now is the way of the Native American. But the stupid part about this is that all they can talk about when they're with the Native Americans is scalping people. And they're supposed to be a non-violent tribe, but all they ever talk about throughout the film when they're with the Native Americans is scalping people. And that's part of the big problem with the insensitivity here, is that they behave as if scalping is just a natural thing that Native Americans do, rather than some tribes who are very, very violent and who didn't make treaties with anybody. If they were the type to scalp people, they wouldn't have made any treaties with the white man.
It's fascinating because this is, I think, possibly the third Disney movie that I've seen since I've joined your podcast where it involves Indians and the talk of scalping people, and that's just been like a huge stereotype throughout a lot of these Western / frontier films, is that all Native Americans, all they want to do is just basically, just steal and scalp people. And maybe it's because it's gotten to the point now that this is like the third one that I've seen, but I don't know. Maybe this one is the one that's like just kind of like watching it like really narrows in on it, because the other two films, like while Westward Ho and Savage Sam both had Native Americans in it, they weren't necessarily the primary. I mean, in Savage Sam they are the focus, but they're more like the antagonists, and we don't really. I mean, they're on film for like the first part of the movie, and then like the second part, we spend most of the time with the search party. But here, like, the Native Americans are the like central focus of it, and And I think because of that, more of those stereotypes are shown a lot more through here. We get to see more of it, and it's I'm not gonna lie, it's a little uncomfortable to watch with some of these scenes because it's like, really, and just ugh. And like we said with the pacing, it doesn't help either, because I think that they're the central focus and bringing along those stereotypes in the previous films. This is why, it's a little more uncomfortable to watch.
They really just drive home this point that they want us to side with the white man on this, that the Indians are savage. And the film tries to make villains out of one white man, but that's it. Like, it doesn't have equal footing, and it really paints most of these Indians, most of these Native Americans, like 95%, are portrayed as vicious, savage, and ready to scalp people at the drop of a hat. The only Native American that isn't, like, vicious and ready to scalp people is the chief of the tribe, who doesn't act as the chief of the tribe because he doesn't stop them from, like, really going against this young boy near the end when he saves the white man. And the basic idea here is, near the end of the film, this boy goes back to the Native Americans. He runs away because one of his friends was killed by the white man. So that's kind of understandable. He's upset, so he goes back to the Native Americans. They're on the warpath, and instead of them actually getting revenge on the people who did it, they just start taking random scalps. They call for this random group of people who are traveling down the river, and he stops them from killing them because they're innocent. But the rest of the tribe turns on him, and the chief of the tribe, who his adoptive father, doesn't say, okay, no, that's enough. He stops them from killing his son, but he still excommunicates his son. So the Native Americans, like, cast this boy out again. It's very weird. So the portrayal of Native Americans in this film is all, like, extremely one-sided. They're all violent. They're all vicious. They don't care about morality in this film. And from a film that's trying to get this perspective of a kid who's adopted, who's trying to get a perspective of a kid who's been kidnapped by Indians and has been forced back into white man society, it doesn't really paint any positive light on the Native Americans, and that's the biggest problem. When he enters white man society, they do showcase that people aren't really appreciative of him. They keep calling him an Indian, which is kind of stupid because he is technically white. He was raised by Indians, but he's not an Indian. And this one guy in particular is just, everything he does is being a dick. But even that does not sway it against the portrayal of the Native Americans in this film.
Or even the portrayals for the white man either, because, like, to me, it feels like it's not just showcasing a negative side of the Native Americans, but also a negative side of the white man. How, like, they have absolutely no respect for the Native Americans whatsoever, especially in the one scene where the one real bad guy, the white man, is doing target practice, and he has a setup of a Native American and is pretending to shoot at it. Well, actually, they're shooting at it, but they're shooting at, like, a dummy Native American, and then the kid runs out and he, like, tries to stop them, and at one point they were almost ready to shoot the boy instead. Like, they were just ready to shoot him, like, oh, because, like, oh, he just happens to be in the way. And it's like, Oh,
Really? Like, the only person who says something is Fess Parker. And Fess Parker's character is the only character in the film that's actually a good person. Basically, Fess Parker is an interpreter between the Native Americans and the white man. I mean, he is white himself, but he is able to interpret, and he's the only person that this boy trusts, and he's the only person that seems to care about both sides. And unfortunately, he can't save the film because he's barely in it. Again, it's a very underutilization of Fess Parker. But he's the one who stops them from shooting the boy, which no one else speaks up, really. Like, there's a person right in, like, not even the Butler family, who is the boy's actual, like, father and mother, aren't there. So I can understand why they don't speak up. But no one else, like, they know this person was just returned to his family, his birth family, and yet they don't say anything. Do they not care about the Butler family at all?
heck, I don't even care about the Butler family because when we first see the Butler family, when the son actually does come back into his real family, like they were kind of a little mean to him. Like it's like oh, just get your head out of this Native American nonsense and just join. And just and remember the first time they had the mother and the trying to say like what your real name, what his real name is, and he like kind of like refuses. It's like watching Roots, where it's like your name is Toby Kunta Kinte. It's like, oh Jesus.
It is exactly like that. That's what I was thinking throughout the entire scene. His father seems nice enough at first, but then he goes to his mother, and his mother's like, now who are you? Your name is John Butler. And instead of like giving him time to adjust because he was just taken, she insists on hammering home and forcing him to say John Butler until he actually does. And then they try to make her seem like the person who's listening to him later on in the film when she's teaching him religion. She's like, she says something about how it relates to the Native Americans and stuff like that. She's trying to be the sensitive one, but after her introduction, I cannot take her seriously.
Yeah, I couldn't either. It's like why did she have? It's like if you're making her the sensitive one, then why was she such a bitch the first time we see her? Because that ruins everything else about her. Because then she's like, oh, like I'm gonna help you read the Bible, and you're my son, and I'm gonna take care of you. It's like, yeah, but you were such a bitch when he came in, and trying to say no, your name is John Butler, and you're gonna do what I say. Like why even start that way?
And the worst thing to me is they didn't have to do that. They could have had the father be the nice one because he looks like a nice person in the beginning, although he's barely in the movie. But they really want to flip-flop it at the like middle part of the film. And they didn't have to do that, but also they really try to hammer home that they understand that the Native Americans kidnapped him. Everyone else is saying, oh, he's still Indian, he looks like an Indian, blah, blah, blah. And yet, they're not sensitive enough to understand that the adjustment period would take some time. It's this weird double standard where he can't be, he can't just be a Native American, and he can't just be a white man. They treat him as both.
I know it's weird because like they do try to incorporate him in like some of their tradition and their customs, like obviously like the dance scene that they did, which is how John Butler ends up meeting the love interest. But in other scenes where they're like trying to show him how to like shoot and stuff, it's like oh they're being it's like, oh dude, you don't know how to do this because you're not white and blah blah blah. It's a weird dichotomy.
It's like the reason why they determine that he still has white in him is that he wins a fist fight with the dick white man who's been like messing with him the entire time. So that's how you measure whether or not you're white, whether you can fight. Really?
But it's weird. That fight is all weird because he's like struggling around like he doesn't know how to throw a punch. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, even if you lived with the Native Americans, like, you would at least know some form of hand-to-hand combat because, I mean, yeah, they're hunter-gatherers, but still, like, the hunting aspect, the hunting part, like, you're doing a lot of stuff hands-on, not just with, like, bows and arrows or hatchets, but, like, you know, hand-to-hand stuff. It's like, you would think you would know. And he's, like, acting like he's never been in a fight before.
Yes, like, the Native Americans would be able to fight. That's just a stupid stereotype. But even then, like, we've seen the Native Americans shoot with actual guns many times throughout the film, and they act like Native Americans can't shoot. It's odd.
It's just very it's like very, very odd.
This film cannot make up its mind whether or not it wants to paint the Native Americans or the white man in the right. And instead it paints everyone in the wrong. And there are ways to do this without coming across as insensitive. Because I've seen films where, take Moana, for instance. I'm not going to spoil the film because it's very, very new. But in Moana, no one person is portrayed as a villain. And they showcase all arguments of each side without painting everybody in this horrible light. Here, everyone's the villain.
I mean, even Dances with Wolves did a much better job with this. Like, because at least with both, because I'm not saying that like the white men were the villains. I mean, in the way they were in that film, but at least with like they painted the Native Americans a little bit more in a positive light. I mean, yeah, they described, because this was like this was the Sioux tribe, and like the Sioux tribe historically were like, I mean, they were a pretty vicious tribe, but here in the movie they painted them a little bit more in a much more gentler light. However, I mean, they still showed like both. They still in a sense showed both sides, especially with Kevin Costner's character, how he wanted to see the frontier before it disappears. And with that, like, he was on the white, he was with the Union Army, but then he decided to go side with the Native Americans and ends up falling in love with one of them. But at least in that film, that was much more positive light. Here, it's like, here's the negative of the white man, here's the negative of the Native Americans, and it's like there's nothing good to come out of this. It's just one big negative slog to get through.
It's a hodgepodge mashup of different stereotypes because these people aren't historically accurate to the way they actually were. Like, you know, they flip-flop between whether or not they want to scalp people, between whether or not they're capable of treaties with white man. And, I mean, they do say, like, white man always goes back on their word. We don't see that, except with that one white person in the film. And then the white man says, oh, well, my entire family was scalped by Indians. But we don't see that. We never see the reason for their motivation. We're told. And that's not enough, because then why is everyone else against these Indians? Because they don't give a reason for everyone else. We're left to assume it's because of all the scalping, that is the stereotypical scalping that's going on. That's a tongue twister. 95% of this film is meandering about with these two ideas. The Indians are vicious, brutal killing machines, and the white man is evil and racist. And that's the film. It's a lot like Savage Sam in that it doesn't have a direction, it doesn't know where it wants to go, and anytime something good is starting to happen, like the one part that I was maybe starting to get into was when they had finally like come to terms with that Dick White guy, and it seemed like the kid who his adoptive name is John Butler. They it seems like he is actually starting to enjoy his life more. Like he has a girlfriend, he's about to get a house, but that lasts for 2 seconds because then his friend is killed and he has to go to the Indians, and then they have all this stupid stuff happening where they have to attack the people on a boat, which the Indians must be horrible shots with these arrows because the raft is right next to them and they have worse aim than the stormtroopers. None of their arrows connect.
Stormtroopers, which is now a Disney property. I'm still trying to get over that. But that's another podcast. Anyway, yeah, they have like bad. Yeah, they were using bow and arrows and they were using guns also, and they still couldn't hit them, even though the raft wasn't that big and there wasn't that many people on there.
They were really close by too. Like the river isn't that wide.
Yeah. No, it wasn't that wide, and like but the attack I don't think lasted too long before John Butler's like no. It's like get away, and they managed to get away. So.
And then his entire tribe turns on him in an instant, saying he's not a real Indian, and I'm just like, you've known this guy most of his life. If he's doing something, he probably has a reason for it, and he was raised by the chief. Like, this one act isn't an act of betrayal, and they treat it like an act of betrayal, and I was face-palming the entire time because they tie him to a stake in the middle of their campground, and they decide what they want to do with him, and they say, oh, he has too much white in him. I'm like, no, he didn't act like a white person, according to your stereotypical beliefs. He saved the lives of people who didn't deserve to be killed. And even the chief agrees with him until he's excommunicated.
Yeah, really. It's this weird double standard. It's like, you're my son, but you're still white. I don't know.
And why can't the chief have any say over what happens in his tribe? Because his tribe does whatever the hell they want, only consulting him like twice throughout the film.
If anything, he's trying to be more like Fess Parker's character, where he was trying to like bridge the gap between the white man and the Native Americans, and that's what I thought what was going to happen with John Butler, but the Native Americans didn't want anything to do with it, which I thought was very odd. And it was a good setup for it, but it didn't materialize that way.
It's because all the conflicts that we see are with John Butler rather than with anyone else. Like the Native Americans in that tribe, we don't really see their conflicts. Yes, one of their brothers was killed, but we don't see how it directly affects them. We don't see them involved in the light, and that's the biggest problem. A lot of it is tangentially related through John Butler as the character who goes through everything. And you can't have that if you're going to represent both sides. I don't know how much more we can really say about this film because most of what we've just said is the plot. It is one of those films where things happen, but it doesn't feel like anything's happening. Conflict lasts 2 seconds,
and then it just kind of goes on. Like even like the dance scene was just filler shots of just people dancing and singing and John Butler glancing around. And that was like that was like 90% of the scene. Oh, and there was this thing with the cake where they're trying to get a ring or a prize or something out of it, but like other than that, it's like it was just something. It's just stuff happens, and that was it. There's a lot of those. There's just a lot of those scenes, and and even when some stuff was happening, the pacing of it was just really slow, and it just sits there, materializes, and it's not a good kind because of all because of all the flagrant stereotypes, and that's about it. That's all I could say, because there's not much to derive from this.
Like, speaking of the scene you mentioned, I think that's a perfect example, where a lot of the padding is this dance, and they dance for a long time, where for some reason John Butler is able to dance, even though he's been with Native Americans for a long time, but he's able to quickly pick up how to dance, which I thought was kind of odd. But after this padding, they have this one scene where in the cake they put a favor. Basically, it was a tradition for whoever found the favor would give it to someone they care about. And that lasted all of 2 minutes, where he found the favor. He tried to give it to Fess Parker because he doesn't know. And then he gives it to this girl he likes. And then immediately the dick white guy takes him over to the side of the building and tries to knock him out, but he's drunk. So the conflict lasts 2 seconds. He falls down. So really, like, that entire scene perfectly exemplifies what the problem is. The film is too padded, and when something legitimately actually happens, plot related, and that has consequences, it's over in 2 seconds. And it's not spoken of again, because even though he made a drunken fool of himself, later on in the film, there are people rooting for him in the fist fight against John Butler.
I know, it's weird. Just the whole pacing of it, like it shifts one way and then it totally shifts another, and you're like, wait, what? When did this start happening?
There are no real characters in the film, really. John Butler is the only person that we follow throughout the film, and even he is badly acted. Basically, he's robotic. He doesn't have any emotions. He doesn't have any real interesting things to say. The only person that I liked is his friend in the beginning of the film, and he's barely in it. But it's this guy who he was kidnapped by Native Americans as well, so he's brought back to the white man. But he's always just all so happy, and I actually enjoyed him.
I swear he was covered in brown face.
Yeah, he looked like it.
Yeah, like I'm sorry for bringing this up, but I'm just like, yeah, this guy's clearly covered in brown face. I'm like, ugh. Add more insult to injury.
So, like, for the most part, the main character isn't likable. He's bland. He's boring, and he just doesn't have anything interesting. The chief is barely there, and even then, he's flip-flopping. Both sides, I didn't like any of these characters, aside from the friend, who's only there for the very beginning of the film. So altogether, like, this entire film just was a slog to get through. It's offensive. It's racist in many ways. Like, it's a flat-out racist film. There have been things that we've covered in the past that you could interpret as either, like, them trying to address things or maybe being a product of the times. While I can see certain things being a product of the times in earlier films where they might have said something off color and not realized it, or not realized that it was offensive, here it's not something they say. It's just the entire portrayal of everyone. It's the entire package. And that's when it becomes a problem to me. It's when everything in this film stands out as what not to do when trying to what not to do when making a film, because it portrays everyone in this light that is unfavorable, and in the end I had no joy from this film.
There was no light through this forest. We did not see the forest through the trees. It was just very bad.
So I can unequivocally say that this is the worst film that we've ever covered on two levels, being both racist and boring entirely on all levels. And just do not see this. I do not care how curious you are about the Disney, films. I don't care if you're a super Disney fan. Do not see this film. Don't support it. Don't do anything for it. Disney forgot it for a reason. That is at least 2 hours of my life I cannot get back after seeing this film.
Yeah, same here.
So that's a pretty sour note to go out on. I'm sorry, guys. This has been very bad for all three of us. I mean, Kat had to watch it twice.
And what's the next film? Oh, Tonka. Walt Disney Western Adventure film. God damn it!
Well, that's the next film at the end of the year. See, we're doing things a little bit out of order since Christmas is coming. So the next time you see us, we'll be talking about a legitimately good film. We will be talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas as a treat, mostly because we needed something good after that, but we realized that we haven't really done anything Christmassy on Christmas, aside from Mickey's Christmas Carol, but we wanted to do something legitimately really good. So when you next see us, we're going to be talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas, and then after that we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to do a year-end review for all the Disney films released this year.
And that includes not just the Disney stuff, but also the Marvel Studios, as well as the new Star Wars movie that's coming out.
So with all of that being said, the next two episodes should finally be talking about something really legitimately good. We'll have a lot better things to say. It won't be as much of a slog for us to get through. But thank you guys for sticking through. I know some of you like these episodes even more. Watching us suffer, and that's fine and all, but we like talking about good films as well, so it'll be nice to finally talk about something that we know and love and that we know more about, because I can definitely say I know a lot more about The Nightmare Before Christmas than I did about this film going in. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to follow any of our exploits, you can always go to facebook.com/thedisneydebate, or you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/zenithrule, twitter.com/Y2Staller, and twitter.com/EphraimTRabbit. We're always willing to talk about Disney films and whatnot. With that said, I am Zenith Rule.
I'm Y2Staller.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Thank you for watching The Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on The Media Meltdown.